The purple sky above Velara Prime burned with falling ships. Ambassador Thys pressed her scaled hands against the crystal window of the emergency bunker, watching her civilization die. The elegant spires that had stood for 10,000 years now crumbled under the weight of alien metal and flesh. "Another transport down," Commander Vex reported from behind her. His voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had not slept in days. The hive caught it just outside the atmosphere. 300 families aboard. Thys closed her golden eyes. The Valerian Empire had ruled 3-star systems with wisdom and peace. They had never known war, never needed to learn the art of killing. Now that ignorance was destroying them. "How many evacuation ships remain?" she asked. 12, Vex said. "Maybe 8 will make it past the blockade." Through the window, Thys could see the hive ships. They were not built so much as grown. Organic curves mixed with dark metal, pulsing, with veins of sickly light. The creatures inside were worse. They had once been like the Valerians, proud and intelligent beings. Now they served as living parts of a vast machine mind. "The distress beacon," Thys said suddenly. "Have we received any responses?" Vex shook his head. "The Galactic Council ships are too far away. The Centauri Republic has closed their borders. Everyone is afraid the hive will spread." Thys understood their fear. The Hive Collective did not simply conquer worlds, they consumed them. Every living thing became part of their growing mass of flesh and metal. Entire species had vanished into their sprawling ships, their knowledge and culture absorbed into the collective mind. "What about the Outer Rim territories?" she asked. Vex looked uncomfortable. "Ambassador, there is nothing out there but empty space and dead rocks. No intelligent life has ever been found beyond the spiral arm." "No intelligent life that we know of," Thys corrected. "But there have been rumors." She moved to the communications console. Her fingers danced over the crystal controls, calling. "Up old files from the intelligence archives, stories that most Valerians dismissed as fantasy." "Here," she said. "Mining surveys from the rim sectors. Strange signals. Radio waves that follow patterns too complex to be natural." Vex joined her at the console. "These reports are decades old, and they come from the dead zone." The dead zone. That was what spacers called the Outer Rim. A region where planets were too close to their violent stars, where radiation and gravity storms made travel dangerous. Any world that could support life in such a place would be a nightmare of heat and poison. "Perhaps," Thys said. "But what if something does live out there? Something that survived in conditions that would kill us?" The bunker shook as another explosion rocked the surface. Emergency lights flickered, casting strange shadows on the crystal walls. Vex checked his instruments. "Direct. Hit on the spaceport," he reported. "The last military squadron is gone." Thys made her decision. She began encoding a new message into the long-range transmitter. Not the formal diplomatic language usually used for first contact, but raw emotional data. Images of their burning cities, the screams of the dying, the desperation of a species facing extinction. "You cannot be serious," Vex said when he realized what she was doing. "We have no idea what might receive that signal. What if these rim dwellers are worse than the hive?" "Then we will die by a different hand," Thys replied. "But if there is even a small chance that someone out there can help us, we must try." She aimed the transmission toward the coordinates in the old mining reports. The signal would take weeks to reach the Outer Rim, but it was all they had left. She pressed the activation key. The message shot out into space at faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the last hope of the Valerian people. Far from the dying world of Velara Prime, Captain Roth sat in the cramped bridge of the mining vessel. Iron resolve. He was checking asteroid composition reports when his communications officer called out. "Captain, I'm picking up something strange," Officer Blake said. It's not coming from any registered source. Roth set down his coffee and moved to Blake's station. The young man was staring at his screen with confusion. "What kind of signal?" Roth asked. "Some kind of distress call, but it's not using any standard format. The computer is trying to translate it now." The translation came through in pieces. Words like help and dying and invasion appeared on the screen. Then images began to form. Alien cities under attack. Strange creatures that looked like they were made of metal and meat. Ships falling from poisoned skies. "Jesus," Blake whispered. "Captain, this is coming from outside human space. Way outside." Roth studied the data. The signal had traveled through several star systems to reach them. It carried the signature of technology that was advanced but completely foreign. This was first contact with an alien species, and they were asking for help. "Sir, what do we do?" Blake asked. Roth knew the regulations. All contact with unknown alien species was supposed to go through Earth Fleet Command, but these images showed a civilization dying in real time. By the time the proper authorities responded, there might be nothing left to save. "Send it to Fleet Command," he ordered. "Full priority transmission." "And Blake?" "Yes, sir." "Make sure they understand this is urgent." The message raced through human communication networks, jumping from relay to relay until it reached Earth. In the deep underground bunkers of Fleet Command, Admiral Kane studied the alien transmission with growing concern. "How long ago was this sent?" she asked her intelligence chief, Colonel Martinez. "Based on the signal analysis, approximately 18 days, Martinez replied. "The translation software is still working on parts of it, but the basic message is clear. Someone is under attack and asking for help." Admiral Kane was a practical woman. She had fought in the Titan Rebellion and the Mars Independence War. She understood the costs of military action, but she also understood the importance of making the right choice when history was watching. "What do we know about the source?" she asked. "The signal originated from a star system about 40 light-years away. Our deep space probes have never reached that far, but the astronomical data suggests several habitable worlds." General Brooks, the head of Earth Defense Forces, leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, with respect, we have no idea what we're dealing with here. This could be a trap. These aliens might be more dangerous than whatever is attacking them." Kane nodded. Brooks had a point. Humanity had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. They had never encountered another intelligent species. The decision she made now could determine the future of the human race. "What about their technology? Level?" she asked. Martinez pulled up the analysis. "Advanced beyond our current capabilities, but not impossibly so. Their faster-than-light communication is actually less efficient than ours, which suggests they developed it differently." Kane looked at the images again. The dying alien cities reminded her of old footage from Earth's wars. The desperation in those signals was something she recognized. Someone was fighting for their survival against impossible odds. "How quickly can we mobilize the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet?" she asked. Brooks sat back in his chair. "Admiral, you can't be serious. We're talking about taking our newest ships into unknown space to fight an enemy we know nothing about." "I'm talking about doing what's right," Kane replied. "If we ignore this call for help, what does that say about humanity? And if we let this Hive Collective destroy these aliens, how long before they come looking for us?" She turned to Martinez. "I want the 3rd Fleet ready to depart in 72 hours. Full combat load, extended range configuration." "Yes, ma'am," Martinez said. Brooks stood up. "I hope you know what you're doing, Admiral." Kane looked one more time at the images of the burning alien world. Somewhere out there, people were dying, while waiting for help that might never come. "So do I, General," she said quietly. "So do I." The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Valerian system like ghosts materializing from the void. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the flagship Defiance, watching the tactical display populate with hostile contacts. Red dots filled the screen, each one representing a hive vessel. "Jesus Christ," whispered Navigator Walsh. "There must be hundreds of them." Kane studied the display with professional calm. The hive ships were unlike anything in human databases. They moved in organic patterns, flowing around the system like a living organism. Some were the size of city blocks, others small and quick. "Like insects? Communications? Any word from the aliens who sent the distress call?" she asked. Lieutenant Torres, the communications officer, shook her head. "Nothing from the planet's surface, Admiral. But I'm detecting some kind of encrypted chatter from the asteroid belt. Might be survivors hiding out there." "Take us in slowly," Kane ordered. "I want to see what we're dealing with before we announce ourselves." The human fleet moved deeper into the system, passing the outer worlds. What they found made even veteran spacers sick to their stomachs. Entire planets had been stripped bare, their surfaces covered with the writhing mass of hive biotechnology. Organic towers pierced the sky, pulsing with unnatural light. "Sir," reported Sensor Chief Park, "I'm reading massive biological activity on those worlds. It's like the whole planet is alive." Kane nodded grimly. She had seen the intelligence reports about the Hive Collective from the alien transmission. They didn't just conquer worlds. They consumed them. Every living thing became part of their growing network. "What about the primary world?" she asked. The tactical screen shifted to show Velara Prime. The planet was still beautiful from space, its purple atmosphere swirling with clouds. But even from this distance, they could see the damage. Dark spots marked where cities had burned. Ships hung, in orbit like metal parasites. "I'm detecting some kind of blockade," Park reported. "The Hive has completely surrounded the planet. Nothing is getting in or out." Kane made her decision. "Torres, try to contact those survivors in the asteroid belt. Use the translation protocols. From the original message." It took several minutes, but finally a weak signal came through. The voice was alien but recognizably intelligent, speaking in careful, broken human words. "Unknown ships? You are human? You received our message?" "This is Admiral Kane of the Earth Defense Forces," Kane replied. "We received your distress call. What is your status?" There was a long pause. Then the alien voice returned, filled with something that sounded like hope mixed with fear. "I am Commander Vex of the Valerian military. We have perhaps 50 ships remaining hiding in the asteroid field. The Hive has taken our homeworld. Most of our people are..." The voice broke. "Most are gone." Kane felt a chill. According to the original message, the Valerian Empire had controlled 3 star systems. Now they were down to 50 ships hiding in space rocks. "Commander Vex, we're here to help, but we need to understand what we're fighting. Tell us about this Hive Collective." What Vex told them over the next hour painted a picture of horror that would give Kane nightmares for years to come. The Hive was not just an alien species. It was a growing cancer that consumed entire civilizations. They took prisoners not for slaves, but for raw material. Every captured being was absorbed into their collective consciousness, their knowledge and memories becoming part of the Hive mind. They started at the galactic rim, perhaps 1,000 years ago, Vex explained. World after world fell to them. The Galactic Council tried to fight, but every defeat made the Hive stronger. They learned from every battle, absorb every tactic. Kane studied the tactical display. If the Hive was that adaptable, humanity's technological advantages might not last long. "What about their weaknesses?" she asked. "Unknown," Vex replied. "They seem to be afraid of nothing. They have no individual fear of death because death simply means joining the collective consciousness." That was when Lieutenant Torres made a discovery that would change everything. "Admiral," she called out, "I'm picking up Hive communications. They know we're here." Kane moved to the communication station. "Can you translate it?" "Some of it," Torres said, her face pale. "Admiral, they're not treating us as a new threat. They're calling us additional biological resources. They think we're just another species to harvest. Kane almost smiled at that. The Hive had clearly never encountered humans before. They had no idea what they were dealing with. "Sir," Sensor Chief Park called out, "I'm detecting movement from the Hive fleet. Several ships are breaking off from the blockade and heading our way." Kane watched the approaching contacts. 6 Hive vessels, each one larger than any ship in the human fleet. Their hulls seemed to pulse with life, and strange energy readings suggested weapons that operated on principles human science barely understood. "Admiral," Commander Vex's voice came through the comm, "you must retreat. Those are hunter ships. They will try to capture your vessels intact to study your technology." Kane looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Young men and women who had volunteered to travel 40 light years into unknown space to help strangers. They deserved to know what they were getting into. "Torres, open a channel to all ships," she ordered. When the channel was open, Kane spoke. To her entire fleet. "All hands, this is Admiral Kane. You've all seen the intelligence reports. You know what the Hive Collective has done to this system. They've turned living worlds into organic factories. They've absorbed an entire civilization into their collective mind." She paused, watching the approaching Hive ships on the tactical display. "Now they think they can do the same to us. They think humans are just another species to be harvested and consumed. They have no idea that we come from a world where survival means fighting every day just to stay alive. They don't know that. Humans evolved not as prey, but as predators." The Hive ships were close now, their alien hulls beginning to glow with weapon energy. "Today we're going to teach them the difference," Kane said. "All ships, prepare for combat. Show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The first Hive ship opened fire with a weapon that turned space itself into acid. The beam struck the destroyer Vigilant, eating through its armor like it was paper. But instead of retreating, Captain Morrison rammed his dying ship directly into the Hive vessel. The explosion lit up space like a new star. "Direct hit!" Park shouted. "The Hive ship is badly damaged." Kane watched as the remaining human ships moved into attack formation. The Hive had probably never seen a species willing to sacrifice their own ships to damage the enemy. They were learning their first lesson about humanity. Humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to make the enemy pay for every victory. "Torres, send a message to Commander Vex," Kane ordered. "Tell him the cavalry has arrived." As the battle erupted around them, Kane realized that this was just the beginning. The Hive Collective was about to discover that they had made a terrible mistake. They had called for the attention of Earth, and Earth had answered. But humanity was not coming as prey to be harvested. They were coming as the apex predator of a death world, and they intended to remind the galaxy what that meant. The war for the survival of free civilizations had begun. The Hive Collective's massive assault fleet materialized in the Valerian system like a plague descending from the stars. Admiral Kane watched from the bridge of the Defiance as hundreds of new contacts appeared on the tactical display. The reinforcements dwarfed the original Hive presence, turning space around Velara Prime into a nightmare of organic metal and pulsing flesh. "Contact from Commander Vex," Torres reported. "He's asking if we want to retreat before the main force arrives." Kane almost laughed. The Valerian commander still didn't understand what he was dealing with. Humans didn't retreat when the odds got worse. They got creative. "Tell him we're just getting started," Kane replied, "and ask him to send us detailed scans of Hive ship interiors. We're going to pay them a visit." The first wave of Hive attackers came in fast, their biomechanical ships flowing through space like living creatures. Their weapons were as alien as their hulls, firing streams of corrosive energy that could eat through any known armor. But the human fleet didn't fight like the civilized species the Hive had consumed before. Captain Mason of the assault ship Fury demonstrated the difference. Instead of trying to outgun the larger Hive vessel, he rammed it at full speed. The impact tore through both ships, but Mason and his boarding team were already suited up and ready. They blasted through the hull breach into the alien vessel. "This is Mason to all ships," came his voice over the comm. "The inside of these things is like a living nightmare. The walls are breathing, but the bastards bleed just fine." What Mason and his team found inside the hive ship challenged every assumption about space combat. The corridors were not built but grown, pulsing with veins that carried nutrients to living weapon systems. The air was thick with spores that would have killed most galactic species in minutes. But humans had evolved on a world full of toxins and disease. Their immune systems treated the alien contamination as just another Tuesday. Engineer Patel moved through the organic hallways with professional calm, setting explosive charges on what looked like nerve clusters. The hive creatures they encountered were things that had once been intelligent beings from dozens of different species, now fused with technology and controlled by the collective mind. "These poor bastards," muttered Sergeant Willis as he put down a creature that might once have been Valerian. "What kind of monsters do this to people? The kind that had never met a species crazy enough to board their ships in the middle of battle," Kane thought. The hive collective operated on the assumption that intelligent life valued self-preservation above all else. They had never encountered a species that considered acceptable losses to be part of the plan. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the fleet's xenobiologist, was monitoring the boarding action from her lab on the Defiance. What she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about the hive. "Admiral," she called out, "I'm analyzing the bio readings from Mason's team. The hive ships aren't just vessels with crews. They are the crew. The entire ship is one giant organism with a distributed nervous system." Kane joined her at the lab station. The readings showed patterns of neural activity flowing through the hive ship like blood through veins. "So when we damage the ship, we're actually wounding the creature?" Kane asked. "Exactly," Vasquez replied. "But here's the interesting part. The neural patterns are showing something I've never seen before. Confusion, fear. The collective mind cannot process what our people are doing." Kane understood immediately. The hive collective shared all knowledge and experience across their network. Every tactic used against them was instantly known by every unit. But humans were doing things that made no tactical sense to a rational mind. Ramming ships, boarding actions in impossible conditions, fighting in ways that should get them all killed. "They can't predict us because we're not acting logically," Kane realized. "More than that," Vasquez said. "Remember, the hive absorbs the consciousness of every species they conquer. They have the tactical knowledge of thousands of civilizations. But every one of those civilizations was logical, rational, and sane. None of them were apex predators from a death world." The battle was spreading throughout the system now. Human ships darted between the massive hive vessels like wolves attacking a herd of buffalo. They used tactics that violated every principle of space combat. The frigate Phoenix deliberately vented its atmosphere to make the crew harder to detect by hive biosensors. The destroyer Wolfpack separated into individual sections, each one operating independently to confuse the collective targeting systems. Commander Vex watched the human fleet from his hiding place in the asteroid belt with growing amazement and horror. The humans were winning, but at a cost that would have broken any civilized species. Half their ships were destroyed or badly damaged. Any rational military force would have retreated hours ago. "How can they keep fighting?" asked his tactical officer, Kane. "They have lost more ships than our entire remaining fleet." Vex studied the tactical display. The humans had just lost another ship, the destroyer Valiant, but its crew had managed to plant some kind of virus in the hive ship's organic computer system before it died. The alien vessel was now twitching and writhing like a poisoned animal. "I think," Vex said slowly, "that we have been asking the wrong question. We assumed they were a civilized species coming to help us fight the hive. But what if they are not civilized at all? What if they are something else entirely?" The answer, came from Dr. Vasquez's continued analysis of the hive neural patterns. The collective mind was not just confused anymore. It was actually frightened. For the first time in 1,000 years of conquest, the hive had encountered something they could not understand or absorb. "Admiral," Vasquez reported, "the hive ships are starting to retreat from direct engagement. They're trying to fall back to long-range bombardment." Kane smiled grimly. The hive collective was learning its first lesson about humans. They were not like other prey species. They bit back. Hard. "Torres, open a channel to the fleet," Kane ordered. When all ships were listening, she spoke with the calm voice of someone who had expected this outcome all along. "All ships. The enemy is beginning to understand what they're facing. They're going to try to keep their distance now. Don't let them. Every hive ship that escapes will carry knowledge about our capabilities." Back to the collective. We end this here. The human fleet regrouped for a final assault on the hive forces. But as they prepared to attack, the aliens made a mistake that would cost them everything. They tried to use their most powerful weapon, the absorption beam that could transfer living consciousness directly into the collective mind. The beam struck the cruiser Independence, washing over the crew with energy designed to rip their minds from their bodies and feed them to the hive mind. What the hive discovered was that human consciousness was not like anything they had absorbed before. It was chaotic, violent, and utterly resistant to control. For a brief moment, the collective mind was forced to experience human emotion directly. They felt what it was like to be an apex predator from a world where everything tried to kill you. They experienced the satisfaction of successful hunt, the fury of protective instincts, and the absolute refusal to submit to any force. The feedback shattered the local hive network. Ships began to drift as their collective coordination failed. For the first time in their existence, the hive experienced something they had never felt before, the fear of being prey. Kane watched as the alien fleet began to break apart. Some ships fled toward the outer system. Others seemed to be fighting among themselves as different parts of the collective mind disagreed about what to do. "Torres, get me Commander Vex," she ordered. When the Valerian commander came on the line, his voice was filled with awe and terror in equal measure. "Admiral Kane, what have you done to them?" Kane looked at the chaos spreading through the hive. Fleet. She thought about her crew, the men and women who had traveled 40 light years to fight monsters they had never seen before. They had won, but she wondered if the galaxy would thank them for it. "We showed them what they really are," she said finally. "Not the apex predator they thought they were, just another species that picks on those weaker than themselves. And they just met something stronger." The battle for Velara Prime was over, but Kane had the feeling that the war was just beginning. The emergency klaxons throughout the Hive Collective's core networks screamed with an alarm that had never sounded before. Retreat. For the first time in 1,000 years of conquest, the collective mind was ordering a full withdrawal from a target system. But it was too late. Admiral Kane had no intention of letting them escape to regroup. "All ships, pursuit formation," Kane ordered from the bridge of the Defiance. "We follow them to whatever hole they crawled out of." The surviving human fleet moved to intercept the fleeing hive ships. What they found was worse than they had imagined. The enemy was not retreating to empty space, but to a system containing 6 worlds, each one converted into a massive biological factory. Billions of absorbed beings labored as living components in structures that stretched across entire continents. "Jesus," whispered Navigator Walsh. "How many species did they wipe out to build this?" Dr. Vasquez ran analysis on the bio readings from the converted worlds. Her face went pale as the data came in. "Admiral, I'm detecting life signs from approximately 400 different species. Some of these patterns are thousands of years old. The hive has been collecting civilizations like specimens." Kane felt a cold fury settle in her chest. This wasn't just conquest or even genocide. This was the systematic collection and preservation of intelligent life as raw material. Every world the hive had touched was now part of their growing organism. "Torres, get me Commander Vex," she ordered. The Valerian commander appeared on the main screen, his face showing the exhaustion of someone who had watched his entire civilization die. "Admiral, you cannot be serious about attacking that system. Those are the primary hive-breeding worlds. They have called in reinforcements from 6 sectors. There will be thousands of ships." Kane studied the tactical display. Vex was right. The hive was concentrating everything they had into this system, but that might actually work in humanity's favor. "Commander, how many of your people are still capable of fighting?" she asked. Vex hesitated. "Perhaps 30 ships with functioning weapons. But Admiral, we cannot match the hive's numbers. This is suicide." "Maybe for a normal species," Kane replied. "But humans aren't normal. We're going to try something that no sane civilization would attempt. We're going to sterilize their entire operation." What Kane was proposing went against every galactic treaty on civilized warfare. The complete destruction of inhabited worlds was considered the ultimate war crime. But Kane was beginning to understand that normal rules didn't apply when fighting. The Hive Collective. Commander Rex of the stealth ship Shadow led the first reconnaissance mission into the Hive system. What he found there changed everything they thought they knew about their enemy. "Admiral," Rex reported from deep within the enemy formation, "you need to see this. The Hive isn't just keeping these absorbed beings as slaves, they're keeping them conscious. All of them. They can feel everything that's happening to them." The transmission included bioscan data that made even veteran spacers sick. Millions of beings from hundreds of species, their bodies fused with hive technology, but their minds still intact. They were aware of what had been done to them, trapped forever as living components in an alien machine. Kane closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them again, her expression was harder than steel. "Rex, can you get close to the central command structure?" "Already on it, Admiral. But you should know, the Hive is adapting to our tactics faster than expected. They're developing countermeasures. That was the problem with fighting a collective intelligence. Every lesson learned by one ship was instantly shared with the entire network. The Hive was beginning to predict human behavior patterns and develop responses, but Dr. Vasquez had been studying the problem from a different angle. "Admiral," she called from her lab station, "I think I know why the Hive can't fully adapt to us. It's not just our tactics that confuse them, it's our biology." Kane joined her at the xenobiology station. Vasquez had been analyzing samples of Hive biological material captured during the boarding actions. The Hive operates on the assumption that all intelligent life develops along similar evolutionary paths, Vasquez explained. They expect prey species to prioritize survival and cooperation. Their entire absorption process is designed for beings who think logically and act predictably. But humans evolved differently, Kane realized. Exactly. We come from what the galaxy would classify as a death world. Everything on Earth was trying to kill us for millions of years. We didn't evolve to be cooperative prey animals. We evolved to be aggressive, adaptable predators who thrive in hostile environments. Kane studied the data. It showed fundamental differences between human neural patterns and those of every species the Hive had absorbed. Where other beings showed logical thought processes and fear responses, humans showed chaos, creativity, and an almost suicidal willingness to take risks. So, when they try to absorb human consciousness, it's like introducing a virus into their system, Kane said. "More than that," Vasquez replied. "I think we might be able to use that as a weapon." While they were talking, the Hive launched their counterattack. The massive fleet that emerged from the converted worlds was unlike anything humanity had faced. Ships the size of cities, organic weapons that could tear apart space itself, and coordination that moved thousands of vessels like a single organism. The human fleet was outnumbered 50 to 1. "All ships, remember your training," Kane broadcast to her fleet. "The enemy has numbers, but we have something they can't understand. Use it." The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for centuries. The humans didn't try to match the Hive's coordination or firepower. Instead, they did the opposite. Each ship acted independently, using tactics so chaotic that even other human ships couldn't predict them. Captain Morris of the frigate Ranger charged directly into the heart of the Hive formation, his ship trailing radioactive debris that confused the enemy sensors. Lieutenant Commander Santos separated her destroyer into 3 sections, each one following a different attack vector. Major Blake led a boarding party onto a Hive command ship by hiding his team inside the wreckage of their own vessel. But the real breakthrough came when technical specialist Nova implemented Dr. Vasquez's biological warfare protocol. Using the samples from captured Hive material, they developed a weapon that attacked the collective consciousness directly. "It's like a computer virus, but for organic neural networks," Nova explained as she prepared the weapon for deployment. When the Hive tries to absorb human thought patterns, this piggybacks on the connection and spreads chaos throughout their network. The weapon was deployed by volunteers who allowed themselves to be captured by Hive absorption beams. As their consciousness was pulled into the collective mind, they carried the virus with them. The effect was immediate and devastating. Hive ships began to behave erratically. Some attacked their own forces. Others simply drifted as their collective. Coordination broke down. The organic factories on the converted worlds started producing random structures instead of weapons and ships. Commander Vex watched the chaos spreading through the Hive network with amazement. "Admiral Kane," he called over the comm, "what have your people done?" Kane watched as more Hive ships began to malfunction. The collective mind was fighting a war on 2 fronts now, against the human fleet in space and against the viral consciousness spreading through their own network. "We gave them a taste of human nature," Kane replied. "Turns out it doesn't agree with them." But the victory came at a terrible cost. Half the human volunteers who had carried the virus into the Hive network were lost forever, their consciousness scattered through the alien collective. The remaining human fleet was down to less than 20 ships, most of them damaged beyond easy repair. As the Hive fleet retreated in disorder, Kane realized that humanity had won more than just a battle. They had proven that the Hive collective was not invincible. But they had also revealed themselves to the galaxy as something perhaps equally dangerous. "Torres, are you picking up any transmissions from the outer systems?" Kane asked. "Yes, ma'am," Torres replied, her face troubled. "Messages are flying between the galactic powers. They all want to know what happened here. And, Admiral—" "What is it?" "Some of them are asking if humanity needs to be contained." Kane looked at the tactical display showing the devastated Hive fleet. She thought about the virus now spreading through the collective consciousness, teaching an ancient enemy what it meant to be afraid. She realized that humanity had just announced their arrival on the galactic stage in the most violent way possible. The question now was whether the galaxy would welcome them as saviors or fear them as the next threat. "Set course for the Valerian refugee fleet," she ordered. "Let's see if we can save what's left of their civilization. We'll worry about the rest of the galaxy later." As the battered human fleet moved to assist the survivors, Kane couldn't shake the feeling that their real war was just beginning. 3 months after the Battle of Velara Prime, Admiral Kane stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council on the neutral station of Harmony Point. The Great Chamber was filled with representatives from 47 different species, all of them watching the human delegation with a mixture of gratitude and barely concealed fear. Ambassador Thys of the surviving Valerian government sat in the front row, her scaled features showing the exhaustion of someone who had spent months rebuilding a shattered civilization. Beside her sat Commander Vex, now promoted to general and serving as the Valerian military representative. "The question before this council," announced Speaker Zentari of the Galactic Assembly, "is whether humanity should be granted membership in our alliance or whether they represent a threat that must be contained. Kane had expected this. The reports from the Hive War had spread throughout the galaxy with alarming speed. Stories of human tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Accounts of biological weapons that could destroy entire collective consciousness networks. Testimony about a species so violent that even the Hive Collective had retreated in fear. "If I may address the Council," Kane said, rising from her seat. Speaker Zentari nodded reluctantly. "The Council recognizes Admiral Kane of the Human Forces." Kane walked to the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of dozens of alien gazes upon her. These beings represented civilizations that had existed for thousands of years, species that had long ago evolved beyond the need for war and violence. To them, humanity was a terrifying reminder of what they had once been. Honored. "Representatives," Kane began, "I understand your concerns. Humanity is not like the other species in this galaxy. We evolved under different conditions, developed different solutions to the problems of survival. What you see as excessive violence, we see as necessary adaptation." A representative from the Centauri Republic stood up, his crystalline form shimmering with agitation. "Admiral Kane, your species destroyed 6 Hive worlds in a single engagement. Worlds containing billions of absorbed beings. How do you justify such genocide?" Kane had known this question would come. The decision to sterilize the hive-breeding worlds was one that would haunt her for the rest of her life. But it had been necessary. "Representative Callis," she replied, "those beings were not alive in any meaningful sense. They were conscious prisoners, trapped in biological machinery, suffering for centuries. We gave them the only mercy we could, a quick death." "But you made that decision without consulting anyone," pressed another representative, this one from the Outer Rim Alliance. "You took it upon yourselves to determine who lives and who dies. What gives you that right?" Kane felt her temper rising, but forced herself to remain calm. These people had never faced extinction. They had never been forced to make impossible choices with the survival of entire species hanging in the balance. "The right of survival," she said finally. The Hive Collective was growing stronger with every world they consumed. Every day we delayed meant more civilizations would be absorbed into their network. We did what needed to be done to stop them. "Ambassador." Thais stood up from her seat. The chamber fell silent as the Valerian representative prepared to speak. "If I may," Thais said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had watched her entire civilization die and be reborn. "This council seems to have forgotten something important. Humanity came to our aid when no one else would. When our distress calls went unanswered, when the Galactic Council declared our system a lost cause, the humans traveled 40 light years into unknown space to help strangers." She turned to face the assembled representatives, her golden eyes blazing with controlled fury. Yes, their methods were violent. Yes, they used tactics that violated every convention of civilized warfare. But they won. The Hive Collective, which had consumed hundreds of worlds over 1,000 years, was defeated by a species that had never been in space combat before. The chamber erupted in murmurs and discussions in dozens of languages. Speaker Zentari called for order. "Ambassador Thais," he said, "no one questions humanity's courage or effectiveness. But surely you understand our concerns. A species capable of defeating the Hive so decisively is also capable of conquering the rest of us." Kane watched as This smiled, an expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Speaker Zentari," the Valerian ambassador replied, "that fear reveals more about this council than it does about humanity. You assume that because humans are capable of violence, they will inevitably use it for conquest. But in the 3 months since their victory, what have they done? They have helped us rebuild our infrastructure. They have shared their medical technology to treat hive contamination. They have asked for nothing in return except the friendship of our people." General Vex stood up beside her. "If I may add," he said, The humans could have easily claimed our territory as the spoils of war. Instead, they offered to help us establish a new homeworld. They could have kept the advanced technology they captured from Hive ships. Instead, they shared it freely with our scientists. Kane felt a moment of gratitude toward the Valerian leaders. They were taking considerable political risk by defending humanity before the Galactic Council, but Representative Kalis was not convinced. "Perhaps they are being generous now," he said. "But what happens when their interests conflict with ours? What happens when humanity decides they want something we are not willing to give?" Kane decided it was time to address the real issue. "You want to know what kind of species humanity is?" she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. "Let me tell you a story." She activated her personal display, showing images from Earth's history, scenes of wars and disasters, but also of cooperation and sacrifice. "This is what we call the World War II, she began. A global conflict where humans fought against other humans who sought to conquer and exterminate entire populations. The death toll was in the tens of millions. The alien representatives watched in horror as the images showed the full scope of human destructive capability. "But here is what you need to understand," Kane continued. "When the war was over, the winning nations did not enslave the losers. They helped them rebuild. They shared technology and resources. They created institutions to prevent such conflicts from happening again." She changed the display to show more recent images from Earth's history. "This is our response to natural disasters. When earthquakes or floods devastate regions of our world, other human nations immediately send aid, food, medicine, rescue teams, whatever is needed. We do this even for nations we have political disagreements with." Kane turned to face the assembled representatives directly. "Yes, humans are capable of tremendous violence, but we are also capable of tremendous compassion. We fight not because we enjoy it, but because we refuse to let innocent people suffer when we have the power to help them." The chamber was silent now, the representatives considering her words. Finally, Speaker Zentari spoke. "Admiral Kane, assuming the Council grants humanity membership in our alliance, what assurances can you give that your species will respect galactic law and the sovereignty of other worlds?" Kane had been preparing for this question for months. "We propose the establishment of a joint oversight committee," she said. "Representatives from the major galactic powers working alongside human officials to review any military action outside our own territory. We will also share our defensive technologies freely with any member world that faces external threats." Representative Kalis leaned forward in his seat. "And if we decide that humanity is too dangerous to be allowed unrestricted freedom," Kane met his gaze steadily, "then you will discover why the Hive Collective was afraid of us," she said quietly. "Humans do not accept cages well. We prefer cooperation to conflict, but we will not allow ourselves to be imprisoned by fear." The threat was delivered so calmly that it took several seconds for the representatives to fully understand what she had said. When they did, the chamber erupted in chaos. Speaker Zentari called for order repeatedly before the noise died down. "This council will adjourn for deliberation," he announced. "We will reconvene in 6 hours with our decision." As the representatives filed out, Ambassador Theiss approached Kane. "That was either very brave or very foolish," the Valerian said. Kane watched the alien delegates through the chamber windows, huddled in groups and speaking in urgent whispers. "Probably both," she admitted. "But they needed to understand that humanity won't be controlled by fear. We've spent too many years fighting for our freedom to give it up now." 6 hours later, the Galactic Council reconvened. Speaker Zentari read the decision with the formality of someone announcing a death sentence. By a vote of 24 to 23, the Galactic Council grants humanity provisional membership in our alliance. This membership will be reviewed annually and can be revoked if humanity is deemed to pose a threat to galactic peace. Kane felt a mixture of relief and disappointment. Provisional membership was better than containment, but it meant humanity would always be watched, always suspected. However, Speaker Zentari continued, the Council also recognizes that humanity has proven itself capable of defeating threats that we could not handle alone. Therefore, we also grant Earth the designation of protector species, with the authority to respond to existential threats to galactic civilization. Kane blinked in surprise. Protector species was a designation that hadn't been used in over 500 years. It gave humanity the authority to act independently when the galaxy faced extinction-level threats. As the session ended and the representatives began to file out, Kane realized what had really happened. The Galactic Council had found a way to use humanity's violent nature while keeping them at arm's length. They would be the galaxy's attack dog, called upon when civilized methods failed. Later that night, Kane stood on the observation deck of the Defiance, looking out at the stars. Dr. Vasquez joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "So," Vasquez said, "we're the official monsters of the galaxy. How does it feel?" Kane accepted the coffee gratefully. "Like we got exactly what we deserved," she said. "We proved we could destroy the Hive Collective, so now they expect us to destroy whatever threatens them next. And will we?" Kane thought about the Valerian refugees, now building new colonies with human assistance. She thought about the absorbed beings they had been forced to kill on the Hive worlds, finally free from their eternal suffering. She thought about the message that was probably already being sent to Earth, calling for more ships and more soldiers. "Yes," she said finally, "because that's what humans do. We fight the monsters so others don't have to." In the distance, a new signal appeared on the communications array. Another distress call from the Outer Rim, reporting strange ships and missing colonies. Kane finished her coffee and headed for the bridge. Humanity's war for the galaxy had just begun. The ground shook again, harder this time. Commander Thyra pressed her delicate hands against the crystal walls of her ship as another massive earthquake tore through her dying world below. Through the viewing port, she watched her beautiful home, planet crack apart like a broken egg. The Villani cities, made of shining crystal towers that had stood for thousands of years, crumbled into dust. Purple skies filled with smoke and ash as the planet's core became unstable. Thyra's people were dying, and she could do nothing to stop it. "Commander, we're losing the last evacuation ships," reported Officer Kale from his station. His voice shook with fear. "The ground is breaking apart too fast. We can't reach the southern continent." Thyra closed her large, silver eyes for a moment. The Villani were a peaceful people who had never known war or violence. They lived on a gentle world, with soft gravity and perfect weather. Their bodies were tall and thin, with skin that glowed softly in the dark. They had evolved to be artists, scientists, and philosophers, not fighters or survivors. "How many ships made it off the surface?" Thyra asked. "Only 12, Commander. That's maybe 3,000 people. The rest—" Kale's voice broke. 3,000. Out of 50 million. Thyra felt her heart break. Her entire civilization was ending, and she was helpless to save them. "Commander," called Mira from the communications station. "I'm reading something strange. These earthquakes aren't natural. Something is causing them." Thyra moved quickly to Mira's station. On the screen, she saw data that made her blood run cold. Energy readings showed massive machines boring into her planet's core from the far side of the world. "Who would do this?" Thyra whispered. "Who would destroy an entire planet?" "The energy signature matches hegemony technology," Mira said quietly. "They're strip mining our world's core for rare metals. They must have been working for months. The hegemony." Thyra had heard the name in scared whispers from other species. They were conquerors who took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. They saw peaceful peoples like the Villani as weak and worthless. Another massive shake threw Thyra against the wall. Outside, she watched the last of her world's great crystal cities fall into a canyon that had opened up like a hungry mouth. "Commander, we need to leave now," Kale said. The planet's gravity is becoming unstable. If we stay much longer, we'll be pulled down with it. Thyra looked one last time at her dying home. Somewhere down there in the ruins and smoke were the bodies of her friends, her family, everyone she had ever known. The hegemony had murdered her entire world for metal ore. Set course for the outer system, she ordered. Take us away from the gravity well. As their ship, the Luminous Dawn, moved away from the dying planet, Thyra made a decision that would change everything. She walked to the main communications console and began typing a message. "What are you doing, Commander?" Mira asked. "I'm sending a distress call on all frequencies," Thyra said. "Every species in the galaxy will hear it. But, Commander, no one will help us. We have nothing to offer. We're just refugees now." Thyra kept typing. Her message was simple and desperate. "This is Commander Thyra of the Villani people. Our world has been destroyed by the hegemony. We are 3,000 survivors with no home and no hope. We have advanced crystal technology that could help many species. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We are dying." She sent the message across every communication channel she knew. It would reach hundreds of worlds and thousands of species. But Thyra knew the truth that Mira was too kind to say out loud. No one would come. In the cold galaxy, the strong survived, and the weak died alone. Hours passed. The Luminous Dawn drifted in empty space while below them, their planet finally broke apart completely. Chunks of rock and crystal scattered into the void like tears. "Commander, we're receiving responses to our distress call," Mira said suddenly. Thyra felt a small spark of hope. "What do they say?" Mira's expression fell. "The Zentari Empire says our territory is too dangerous to enter. The Trade Federation offers to buy our crystal technology, but won't provide rescue ships. The democratic worlds say they will consider sending aid in 6 months after a council vote. 6 months. They would all be dead in 6 days without food. And proper life support. More responses came in, each one the same. Species after species found excuses not to help. Some were honest about their fear of the hegemony. Others just didn't care about the fate of a weak, peaceful people." "Commander," Kale said quietly, "long-range sensors show 3 large ships approaching our position. They're hegemony vessels." Thyra felt ice in her veins. The hegemony had come to finish what they started. They would capture the survivors, steal their technology, and probably use them as slaves until they died. "How long until they reach us?" she asked. 2 hours, maybe less. Thyra stared at the communications console. Her distress call had failed. No one in the galaxy cared enough to risk their own safety for a dying people. She began to understand why the hegemony grew stronger every year. When good people did nothing, evil people won. She was about to turn off the communication system when a new message came through. The voice was strange, speaking in a language she had never heard before, but her computer translated it automatically. "This is Admiral Blake of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your distress call. We are coming to help you. Hold your position and do not engage any hostile forces. Help is on the way." Thyra stared at the message in confusion. "Mira, run that through our database. What species are these Terrans?" Mira worked quickly at her console, then looked up with fear in her eyes. "Commander, according to our records, Terra is a death world. The computer says it's impossible for intelligent life to evolve there." "What's a death world?" Thyra asked. "A planet so dangerous that no rational species could survive on it. According to the database, Terra has poisonous weather, deadly animals, unstable geology, and radiation from its star. The gravity is 3 times what most species can handle. Our scientists always believed death worlds were empty of life." Thyra felt a chill run through her body. What kind of creatures could survive on such a nightmare world? And what did they want with her people? "Commander!" Kale called out, his voice filled with panic. The hegemony ships are powering up their weapons. They'll be in firing range in 30 minutes. Thyra looked at the translated message from the mysterious Terrans. One more time, she had a choice to make. She could surrender to the hegemony and hope for a quick death, or she could trust these unknown Deathworlders who claimed they were coming to help. Outside the ship, space remained cold and empty. Somewhere in that darkness, help was coming from. A world that shouldn't exist, crewed by beings that shouldn't be alive. Thyra just hoped she would live long enough to find out what kind of creatures called a death world home. Admiral Marcus Blake sat in his command chair aboard the space station Olympus, watching Earth turn slowly below him. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from orbit, but Blake knew better. He had grown up on that world, survived its storms, its predators, and its 1,000 different ways to kill the unwary. "Admiral, we're receiving a distress signal," said Lieutenant Rosa Martinez from the communications station. "It's on an open channel, broadcasting to the entire galaxy." Blake turned his attention to his tactical officer. Martinez was tough, like all humans who served in the Terran Defense Force. She had survived 3 tours fighting pirates in the outer colonies and never complained about anything. "Let me hear it," Blake said. The translated voice that came through the speakers was soft and desperate. It spoke of a dying world, murdered people, and survivors who had nowhere to go. Blake listened to the entire message, his expression growing darker with each word. "Hegemony," he said quietly. "Those bastards are at it again." "Sir, should we report this to command?" asked Ensign David Kumar from his station. Kumar was young but smart, and he had good instincts about alien communications. "We are command in this sector," Blake replied. "How many ships do we have available?" "For immediate deployment?" Martinez checked her screens. "The Dreadnought Indomitable is fully operational with a crew of 800. The destroyers Hurricane and Tempest are on patrol but can be recalled in 20 minutes. The medical ship Sanctuary is in dock for supplies." Blake stood up and walked to the main display screen. It showed a map of local space, with ship positions marked in blue. He had enough firepower to handle most problems, but the hegemony was not most problems. "Sir," Kumar said carefully, "the distress call came from the Andorian cluster. That's 3 days away at maximum speed. These aliens might be dead before we arrive." "Then we better hurry," Blake said. "Martinez, recall all. Patrol ships immediately. Kumar, send a message to Captain Wells on the Sanctuary. Tell her to prepare for refugee assistance and possible combat casualties." "Admiral," Martinez said, "are we really going to risk our ships for people we've never met? The hegemony has at least 50 warships in that sector." Blake looked at her, steadily. "Lieutenant, what's the first rule of the Terran Defense Force?" Martinez straightened in her chair. "Protect those who cannot protect themselves, sir." "Exactly. I don't care if these aliens are from across the galaxy. Someone is murdering innocent people, and we're going to stop it." Blake walked back to his command chair and activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships. This is Admiral Blake. We have received a distress call from the Andorian cluster. A peaceful alien civilization is under attack by hegemony. Forces. We are mounting an immediate rescue operation. All ships will be ready to depart in 1 hour." Across the station and the nearby ships, hundreds of humans began preparing for battle. They checked weapons, loaded supplies, and said quick goodbyes to family members. None of them questioned the order to risk their lives for unknown aliens. It was simply what humans did. Dr. Hannah Wells, the chief medical officer aboard the Sanctuary, received Blake's message while treating a sick colonist from Mars. She immediately began converting her cargo bays into refugee shelters and preparing medical supplies for alien physiology. Captain Jack Torres of the Indomitable ordered his crew to battle stations and began plotting the fastest course to the Andorian cluster. His ship was the biggest in the fleet, armed with enough firepower to level a small moon. Captain Lisa Park of the Hurricane and Captain Mike Johnson of the Tempest broke off from their patrol routes and set course for the rendezvous point. Their Smaller ships were fast and deadly, perfect for the kind of hit-and-run tactics humans preferred. Within an hour, the small Terran fleet was ready to depart. 4 ships against unknown odds, heading into space controlled by humanity's enemies. For any other species, it would be suicide. For humans, it was Tuesday. "All ships report ready, Admiral," Martinez said. "Very good. Open a channel to the alien survivors." Kumar worked at his console for a moment. "Channel open, sir," Blake spoke clearly into his communicator. "This is Admiral Blake of the Terran Defense Force. We have received your distress call. We are coming to help you. Hold your position and do not engage any hostile forces. Help is on the way." He closed the channel and turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for the Andorian cluster, maximum speed." As the 4 human ships entered hyperspace, they had no way of knowing that their message had terrified the aliens they were trying to save. The Vallani had never heard of humans before, but their computer databases contained old warnings about death worlds. According to galactic science, planets like Earth were impossible. The gravity was too strong, the weather too violent, the animals too dangerous. Any species that evolved on such a world would be monsters, barely controlled killing machines driven by instincts forged in constant battle for survival. The Vallani survivors huddled in their damaged ship, wondering if they had called for help, or simply invited a worse fate. Stories spread through the galaxy about Deathworld species, being so violent and unpredictable that civilized races avoided them entirely. But Blake and his crews knew nothing of these fears. They only knew that innocent people were dying, and they had the power to help. The concept that other species might be afraid of humans never occurred to them. In their minds, they were the good guys coming to save the day. The hyperspace journey would take 3 days. During that time, Blake studied everything his databases contained about the hegemony. They were an aggressive empire that conquered weaker species and stripped their worlds of resources. They had been expanding for decades, growing stronger with each victory. "Admiral," Martinez said on the 2nd day of their journey, "I've been thinking about our tactical situation. The hegemony knows this sector better than we do. They'll have more ships, better positions, and they'll be expecting resistance." Blake nodded. "What do you recommend?" "We use our advantages. Human ships are faster and more maneuverable than hegemony vessels. Our crews can handle higher gravity and more extreme conditions. We fight the kind of battle they won't expect." "Which is?" Martinez smiled grimly. "We fight dirty." On the 3rd day, long-range sensors detected the aftermath of the Vallani world's destruction, debris scattered across space like a graveyard of dreams. In the middle of it all, one small ship broadcast a weak distress signal. "There," Blake said, pointing at the display. "The survivors." "Admiral," Kumar said urgently, "I'm reading 3 large ships approaching the survivor vessel. They're hegemony cruisers and they're powering up weapons." Blake felt anger burn in his chest. The hegemony wasn't content with destroying a world. They wanted to murder the survivors, too. "All ships prepare for combat," he ordered. "We're not letting those bastards finish what they started." The 4 human ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the debris field. Ahead of them, 3 massive hegemony warships surrounded a tiny alien vessel like wolves circling wounded prey. Blake opened a communication channel to his fleet. "Remember, people, we're here to save lives, not take them. But if the hegemony wants a fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." The battle for the Vallani survivors was about to begin. Captain Nix of the hegemony stood on the bridge of his cruiser Dominator, watching the pitiful alien ship drift helplessly among the debris of their destroyed world. The Vallani vessel was small and damaged, barely holding together. Its crystal hull was cracked, and atmosphere leaked from several holes. "Captain, the aliens are still refusing to surrender their technology," reported his first officer. "They claim they need it to keep their life support working." Nix laughed coldly. The hegemony had been hunting the Vallani for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their crystal energy technology was worth more than entire star systems. Once he captured it, his promotion to admiral would be guaranteed. "Tell them they have 10 minutes to transfer all technical data or we start shooting," Nix ordered. "Their ship won't survive another hit." The Villani had already proven how weak they were. When the hegemony attacked their world, they didn't fight back. They just ran away like frightened children. Nix had no respect for such cowards. "Captain," the sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting 4 ships approaching at high speed. They just dropped out of hyperspace." Nix frowned. "What species? More Villani survivors?" "Unknown, sir. The ships don't match any design in our database. They're strange." On the main screen, 4 vessels approached through the asteroid field that had once been a planet. They moved with impossible precision, dodging massive chunks of rock that would destroy most ships. The lead vessel was huge and heavily armed. The 3 smaller ships danced around it like deadly escorts. "Captain," the communications officer said nervously, "we're receiving a transmission from the unknown ships. Put it through." A voice spoke in a language Nix had never heard before, but his computer translated it immediately. The voice was calm and controlled, but underneath it was something that made Nix's skin crawl. "This is Admiral Blake of the Yi. Terran Defense Force. You will immediately withdraw from this system and leave the survivors alone." Nix felt his blood turn cold. Terra. Every species in the galaxy knew that name, even if they pretended it was just a myth. The death world that shouldn't exist, home to creatures that no sane being wanted to meet. "Sir," his first officer whispered, "the database says Terra is impossible. Nothing could evolve there." "Then these aren't from Terra," Nix said, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's some kind of trick." But even as he spoke, Nix watched the 4 ships move through the debris field like it was empty space. They navigated around spinning asteroids and jagged metal with the ease of predators hunting in their natural habitat. Only something that evolved in constant danger could move like that. Aboard the luminous Dawn, Commander Thyra stared at her, screen in disbelief. The 4 ships that had come to help her people were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were built for war, with thick armor and massive weapons, but they moved with a grace that took her breath away. "Commander?" "Officer," Kale said quietly. "Those ships are from Terra. Our computer confirms it." Thyra felt fear and hope war in her chest. The database said Terrans were monsters, but they had come to help when no one else would. What kind of creatures were they? "The hegemony ships are moving to attack formation," Mira reported. "They have more firepower than the Terran vessels." On the hegemony flagship, Captain Nix made his decision. Deathworlders or not, he had 3 heavy cruisers against 4 smaller ships. Numbers would win the day. "All ships, open fire," he ordered. "Destroy the Deathworlder vessels." The 3 hegemony cruisers unleashed a devastating barrage of energy weapons. Bright beams of destruction lanced through space toward the human ships. For a moment, Nix thought he had won. Then the Terran ships simply weren't there anymore. Admiral Blake watched the enemy fire pass harmlessly through empty space. "Evasive maneuvers working perfectly," he said with satisfaction. "Martinez, return fire." The human ships had scattered like a pack of hunting wolves. The massive Indomitable used a spinning asteroid as cover, while its guns targeted the lead hegemony vessel. The Hurricane and Tempest attacked from opposite directions, forcing the enemy to split their fire. Captain Nix watched in horror as his carefully planned attack formation fell apart. The Terran ships moved like living things, using every piece of debris as a weapon or shield. They fired from impossible angles and disappeared behind cover before return fire could reach them. "How are they doing this?" His first officer gasped as another spread of missiles missed their targets completely. Nix didn't answer. He was beginning to understand the truth about Deathworlders. They didn't just survive in dangerous environments, they thrived in them. To his ships, the debris field was an obstacle. To the Terrans, it was home. The Indomitable's main guns spoke, and Nix's second cruiser exploded in a ball of fire. The Sanctuary, the Terran medical ship, moved in to protect the Villani survivors, while the Hurricane and Tempest continued their deadly dance around the remaining hegemony vessels. "Captain, we're taking heavy damage," the tactical officer reported. "Our shields are down to 30%. Nix felt sweat drip down his face. This was supposed to be an easy mission. Kill some weak aliens, steal their technology, and go home. Instead, he was fighting creatures from his species' worst nightmares. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Terran flagship." "Put it through." Admiral Blake's voice filled the bridge, and this time, the cold anger underneath was impossible to miss. "This is your final warning. Withdraw immediately, or we will destroy you." Nix looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. These were hardened hegemony warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. Now they cowered at the sound of a Deathworlder's voice. We are withdrawing," Nix said, hating himself for the words. "Smart choice," Blake replied. "And Captain? If we see hegemony ships in this sector again, we won't be so generous." The transmission ended, leaving Nix alone with his shame. He had just surrendered to 4 ships when he commanded 3. But as he watched the Terran vessels move through space like apex predators, he knew he had made the right choice. "Set course for hegemony space," he ordered quietly. "Maximum speed." As his ships retreated, Nix sent an urgent message to High Command. "Mission failed. Encountered Terran Defense Force. Request immediate reinforcements and authorization to avoid Deathworlder contact zones." But even as he sent the message, Nix knew the truth. The galaxy had just changed forever. The Deathworlders were real, and they were protecting the weak. Aboard the luminous Dawn, Commander Thyra watched the human ships surround her vessel in a protective formation. She could see their weapons were still powered up, ready to fight again if needed. "Commander," Mira said softly, "the Terran medical ship is requesting permission to dock. They want to help our wounded." Thyra stared at the massive vessel approaching. Her ship. Inside that hull were creatures from a world of nightmares, beings that had just defeated 3 hegemony cruisers without breaking stride. But they had also saved her people when no one else would. "Grant docking permission," she said finally. "Let's meet our saviors." As the Sanctuary's docking tube connected to the luminous Dawn, Thyra wondered what kind of monsters looked like when they came to help instead of hurt. She was about to find out that sometimes the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy were also the most compassionate. Commander Thyra slowly opened her silver eyes, expecting to find herself in a dark prison cell or torture chamber. Instead, she was lying on the softest bed she had ever felt, surrounded by gentle lights and the quiet hum of advanced medical equipment. "Good. You're awake," said a warm voice nearby. Thyra turned her head and saw something that made her breath catch in her throat. A human stood beside her bed, but it wasn't the monster she had expected. Dr. Hannah Wells was shorter than most Villani, with brown hair and kind eyes. She wore a white coat covered in what looked like healing symbols. Where am I?" Thyra whispered. "Medical bay of the TDF Sanctuary," Dr. Wells said gently. "You were hurt when your ship lost atmosphere. We've been treating you for 3 days. Thyra tried to sit up, but her body felt weak. "My people? Are they safe?" "All 2,847 survivors are aboard our ships," Dr. Wells said. "We've been taking care of everyone. Your friend Mira has been asking about you every hour." Thyra stared at the human doctor in confusion. Everything. She had been taught about Deathworlders, said they were violent killers who lived only for battle. But Dr. Wells moved with gentle precision, checking medical readings with the care of someone who truly wanted to help. "I don't understand," Thyra said. "You're from Terra. You're supposed to be..." "Monsters?" Dr. Wells smiled sadly. Yes, we've heard that before. Let me guess. Your databases say we're uncontrollable killing machines? Thyra nodded weakly. Well, I suppose that's partly true, Dr. Wells said. We can be very dangerous when someone threatens innocent people, but we can also be healers, teachers, and friends, just like any other species. The medical bay doors opened, and Officer Mira rushed in. Behind her walked Admiral Blake, looking much less frightening than Thyra had imagined. He was tall and strong, but his eyes were kind. "Thyra!" Mira exclaimed, rushing to her commander's bedside. "We thought you might not wake up. The humans have been so good to us. They've shared their food, their medicine, everything." Admiral Blake approached the bed slowly, careful not to frighten the injured alien. "Commander Thyra, I'm Admiral Blake. How are you feeling?" "Better, thanks to your doctor," Thyra said. "But I must ask, why did you help us? What do you want in return?" Blake looked genuinely confused. "We don't want anything. You sent a distress call and we responded. That's what we do. But, we have nothing to offer you. We're just refugees." "You're people in need of help," Blake said firmly. "That's all we need to know." Over the next few hours, as Thyra recovered her strength, she learned the truth about humans. They had rescued her people not for profit or politics, but simply because it was the right thing to do. It was a concept that amazed her. Mira brought her reports of what was happening throughout the human fleet. Villani children were playing games with human crew members, despite not speaking the same language. Villani engineers worked alongside human technicians, sharing knowledge freely. The humans had even prepared special food that Villani could eat safely. "They're not monsters," Mira said quietly. "They're just very protective. When they thought we were in danger, they became something terrifying. But when they knew we were safe, they became the kindest people I've ever met." Admiral Blake returned, later with Lieutenant Martinez and Ensign Kumar. They wanted to hear Thyra's story about the hegemony attack. As she spoke, she watched their expressions grow darker. "This isn't the first time," Blake said when she finished. "The hegemony has been destroying peaceful worlds for years. Someone needs to stop them." "Who?" Thyra asked. "They have hundreds of ships and control dozens of systems. No one is strong enough to fight them." Blake looked at Martinez and Kumar, and Thyra saw something pass between them. It was the look of people making a dangerous decision. "We are," Blake said simply. Thyra felt her heart skip. "Admiral, you have 4 ships. The hegemony has fleets." "Then we'll build our own fleet," Martinez said. "There are other species out there who are tired of being bullied. We'll help them defend themselves." "You would do that? Risk your lives for people you don't even know?" "Commander," Blake said, "let me tell you something about humans. We're not the strongest species in the galaxy, or the smartest, or the most advanced. But we have one quality that keeps us alive. We never give up, and we never abandon our friends." Over the following weeks, as the combined human and Villani ships traveled through space, an amazing partnership began to form. Villani crystal technology, powered by human engineering, created energy shields stronger than anything seen before. Human tactics, combined with Villani sensors, made their small fleet nearly unstoppable. Dr. Wells worked with Villani healers to develop new medical techniques. Lieutenant Martinez trained Villani engineers in defensive systems. Ensign Kumar helped establish communication networks between refugee species throughout the galaxy. "Admiral," Kumar reported one morning, "we're receiving distress calls from 6 different systems. The hegemony is moving faster than ever before." Blake studied the star map on his screen. The hegemony forces were spreading out across the galaxy, attacking multiple targets at once. It was as if they were racing against time. "They're afraid," he realized. "They know we're out here now, and they're trying to finish their conquest before we can stop them." "Sir," Martinez said urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting a massive fleet movement." Over 300 hegemony ships are gathering in the Nexus system. Blake felt ice in his veins. 300 ships was more firepower than most galactic governments could field. What's in the Nexus system? The Kalari homeworld, Thyra said quietly. They're a peaceful aquatic species. If the hegemony attacks them, it won't just be conquest, Blake finished. It'll be genocide. The bridge fell silent as everyone realized what was happening. The hegemony wasn't just trying to win territory anymore. They were trying to eliminate every peaceful species in the galaxy before the humans could protect them. Admiral, Kumar said, we're also detecting something else. The fleet is being led by Supreme Admiral Vex himself. He's never left hegemony space before. Blake had heard of Vex, the hegemony's greatest military commander, a being who had conquered more worlds than any other leader in their history. If he was coming personally, it meant the hegemony considered the human threat serious enough to require their best general. How long before they reached the Kalari? Blake asked. 4 days, Martinez replied. Blake looked around his bridge at the mix of human and Villani officers working together. 4 days to save an entire species from extinction. 4 days to prove that the weak didn't have to bow to the strong. Send a message to all refugee ships in this sector, he ordered. Tell them we're making a stand at Nexus. Anyone who wants to fight for freedom is welcome to join us. Admiral, Thyra said carefully. 300 ships against our small fleet. It's suicide. Blake smiled grimly. Commander, let me teach you something about humans. We don't believe in fair fights. We believe in winning fights. He turned to address his entire crew over the communication system. All hands, this is Admiral Blake. In 4 days, we're going to face the largest enemy fleet in galactic history. They expect us to run or hide. Instead, we're going to show them why you should never threaten a Deathworlder's friends. As the small fleet set course for the Nexus system, neither the humans nor their alien allies knew that reinforcements were already on the way. Word of their mission had reached Earth, and across human space, volunteer ships were launching to join the fight. The battle that would determine the fate of the galaxy was about to begin. Supreme Admiral Vex stood on the bridge of his massive flagship Domination, watching 300 hegemony warships move into attack formation around the Kalari homeworld. This was the largest fleet he had ever commanded, and it would be his greatest victory. The aquatic Kalari had already surrendered, begging for mercy from their underwater cities. Like all weak species, they thought words could save them from superior force. Vex would prove them wrong, just as he had proven it to dozens of other pathetic civilizations. Admiral, we've completed orbital bombardment positions, reported his tactical officer. We can begin sterilizing the planet on your command. Vex nodded with satisfaction. After today, every species in the galaxy would know that defying the hegemony meant death. The example would be so terrifying that future conquests would surrender. Without a fight. Sir, the sensor officer called out suddenly, I'm detecting ships approaching the system. 4 vessels. Same configuration as the ones that interfered at the Villani world. Vex felt anger burn in his chest. The Deathworlders had come, just as he had hoped. Today he would end their interference permanently and prove that even monsters could be destroyed by superior numbers. How many ships? He asked. 4, sir. The same ones as before. Vex laughed coldly. 4 ships against 300. These Deathworlders are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the massive hegemony fleet spread across space like a dark cloud. He had never seen so many enemy ships in one place, but he felt no fear. Behind him, Commander Thyra and her Villani officers worked alongside his human crew, preparing for the battle of their lives. Admiral, Lieutenant Martinez reported, I count 312 hegemony vessels. They have us outnumbered, 75 to 1. Acceptable odds, Blake said calmly. causing several Villani to stare at him in amazement. "Sir," Ensign Kumar said urgently, "we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony flagship. Put it through. Supreme Admiral Vex's." Voice filled the bridge, speaking in the harsh language of the Hegemony. The translation came through cold and arrogant. "Deathworlders, you have made a mistake coming here. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick." Blake activated his own transmitter. "This is Admiral Blake of the Terran Defense Force. You're the one who made a mistake, Vex. You threatened innocent people under our protection." "Your protection?" Vex laughed. "You have 4 ships. I have 300. Your protection is worthless." "We'll see about that," Blake replied, then closed the channel. He turned to his crew. "Martinez, signal all ships. Execute Plan Omega." What Vex didn't know was that the 4 human ships had spent the last 3 days preparing the Nexus system for battle. Using Villani crystal technology and human engineering, they had turned every asteroid, every gas cloud, and every piece of space debris into a potential weapon. The battle began when the Hegemony fleet opened fire with enough energy to crack a moon. But the human ships weren't where the targeting computers said they should be. They had vanished into the system's asteroid belt, using the massive rocks as cover. "Where did they go?" Vex demanded, as his weapons fire hit empty space. "Unknown, sir. They're using the asteroids to block our sensors." Vex snarled with frustration. "Send hunter squadrons into the belt. Find them and destroy them." 50 Hegemony ships moved into the asteroid field, confident that their superior numbers would overwhelm the hiding enemy. They were wrong. The humans had turned the asteroid belt into a maze of death. Hidden among the rocks were Villani crystal, mines programmed to explode when enemy ships came too close. Magnetic nets, invisible to sensors, caught Hegemony fighters and crushed them against spinning asteroids. Captain Torres of the Indomitable used a massive asteroid as a shield, while his guns picked off enemy ships one by one. His vessels powerful. Engines let him accelerate and brake in ways that would kill most alien crews. But humans had evolved on a high-gravity world where such forces were normal. Captain Park and Captain Johnson, commanding the Hurricane and Tempest, worked together. Like a pair of hunting wolves, they would appear from behind cover, destroy an enemy ship, and vanish again before return fire could reach them. "Admiral," Vex's tactical officer reported in a shaking voice, "we've lost 60 ships in the asteroid field. The Deathworlders are using the environment itself as a weapon." Vex felt fear creep into his mind. How could anyone fight a battle like this? The humans moved through the dangerous asteroid field as if it were their natural habitat, turning every hazard into an advantage. "Pull our ships back," he ordered. "We'll bombard the entire asteroid belt with heavy weapons." But as the Hegemony fleet began its bombardment, something incredible happened. From the edge of the system, new ships began to appear. First dozens, then hundreds, all bearing the markings of the Terran Defense Force. "Admiral," Kumar said with excitement, "it's the Earth fleet. They came." Blake smiled as he watched human ships pour into the system. Mining vessels from the asteroid colonies, cargo haulers from the outer worlds, even civilian ships crewed by volunteers. They had heard that their people were fighting to protect innocent aliens, and they had come to help. Commander Thyra stared in amazement at the growing human fleet. "How many ships are there?" 800 and counting, Martinez reported. "And they're all volunteers." Vex watched his certain victory turn into his worst nightmare. The human reinforcements didn't fight like any military he had ever seen. Mining ships used their drilling equipment as weapons. Cargo haulers rammed. Enemy vessels with their reinforced hulls, civilian craft swarmed around Hegemony cruisers like angry insects. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His first officer answered with a voice full of terror. "Sir, I think we've made a terrible mistake. We didn't just attack some random Deathworlders. We attacked their friends." The tide of battle turned completely. Human ships, designed to work in the harshest environments in the galaxy, used every trick they had learned from mining asteroids, fighting solar storms, and surviving in deep space. They turned the Nexus system into a three-dimensional battlefield where up and down had no meaning. The Sanctuary and other medical ships worked frantically to rescue survivors from both sides. Dr. Wells found herself treating injured hegemony. Soldiers alongside Kalari refugees, showing the same compassion to everyone who needed help. Vellani crystal technology, powered by human determination, created energy shields that protected the rescue ships while they worked. Kalari aquatic vessels, designed for underwater exploration, proved surprisingly effective at navigating through the chaos of battle. As the fight continued, more alien species began to arrive. The Drift, aquatic beings with incredible sensor abilities, helped coordinate the Allied fleet movements. The hive minds, insectoid creatures with perfect teamwork, organized supply lines that kept the human ships fighting. Supreme Admiral Vex realized he was not just fighting 4 human ships anymore. He was fighting an entire alliance of species that had decided they were tired of being bullied. The weak had found their protectors, and together they were stronger than his mighty fleet. "Sir," his communications officer said desperately, "we're receiving surrender requests from 40 of our ships. They're requesting permission to withdraw." Vex looked around his bridge at his terrified crew. These were hardened hegemony warriors, who had conquered half the galaxy. Now they begged to retreat from a battle they should have won easily. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the Deathworlder flagship is approaching our position. They're requesting to speak with you." Vex straightened his uniform and tried to maintain his dignity as Admiral Blake's face appeared on his screen. The human looked tired but determined, and his eyes held no mercy. "This is over, Vex," Blake said simply. "Surrender now, and we'll let your people go home." "You cannot defeat the hegemony," Vex said, though his voice shook. "We have 1,000 worlds, 10,000 ships. And we have something you'll never understand," Blake replied. "We have friends worth fighting for." Vex looked at his tactical display one more time. Half his fleet was destroyed or fleeing. The other half was surrounded by human ships and their alien allies. He had lost the greatest military force in Galactic. History to a few Deathworlders and their friends. I surrender," he said quietly. Blake nodded. "Signal all hegemony ships to power down weapons and prepare to withdraw from this system. Any ship that fires on refugees or rescue vessels will be destroyed immediately." As the broken hegemony fleet limped away from the Nexus system, Vex sent one final message to his home government. "Do not engage the humans. They are not like us. They do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for each other. Find another galaxy." 3 months later, Commander Thera, now Admiral Thyra of the Allied Defense Force, stood beside Admiral Blake on the bridge of their new flagship Unity. Through the viewing port, she could see ships from a dozen different species working together to build a space station that would serve as headquarters for their alliance. "Hard to believe it all started with a simple distress call," she said. Blake smiled. "Sometimes the smallest actions have the biggest consequences. You called for help, and the galaxy answered." "Not the galaxy," Thyra corrected. "Humanity answered. Everyone else was too afraid." "Well," Blake said thoughtfully, "maybe we just made it easier for good people to do the right thing." A new distress signal came through the communication system. Somewhere in the galaxy, another peaceful species was under attack by those who preyed on the weak. Admiral Blake activated the fleet-wide communication system and spoke the words that had become a promise to every innocent species in the galaxy. "This is the Terran Defense Force. We're coming." As the Allied fleet set course for another rescue mission, the galaxy had learned an important lesson. It wasn't the strongest or most advanced species that survived in the end. It was the one that never gave up on protecting others, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The Death World had awakened, and it was fighting for everyone.